Hello, friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. All right, so it is Monday, and we had kind of an interesting rainstorm blow through here last night, early this morning. I had actually been hearing about this for a couple days and kind of watching it, and became really aware of what was going on because my NOAA weather radio was going off all night last night. It probably went off about 4 times. I tried to go to bed about midnight and kept getting waken up by it. And so I actually decided about 2:15 or so, you know what? I'm just watching this storm. It's almost here. I'm just going to sit and wait for it just to get past, just because, I'm not going to be able to sleep anyway with this NOAA radio going off anytime. Now, this storm, while it was very, very powerful and very, very windy here, it didn't actually drop an enormous amount of rain. But for the 4 to 6 hours before it came here, it was actually very, very windy. I'm kind of used to this kind of wind from California because we have something in California called a Santa Ana condition, where you end up with an offshore flow. And in the area I lived in Placentia, it got really gusty, and it wasn't uncommon for there to be 60 or 70 mile an hour gusts. Well, this was a lot like that. However, like I said, there was the potential of the creating of tornadoes, and that was what my weather radio was saying over and over again, that there were tornado watches and tornado warnings going on all over the place. Now, I'll admit I'm not I'm not a perfect expert by any stretch of the imagination on tornadoes, but I know a little bit how they work, and I'll try and explain just in very kind of general terms. Basically, a tornado is just a very, very powerful storm, and they happen a lot in this area of the country, in an area called Tornado Alley. And the reason it happens is because there's an interesting weather phenomenon that goes here. You have the jet stream, which is blowing cool, dry air eastward across the United States. It goes up over the Rocky Mountains and it comes down, and it's very cool and very dry. And when it gets to about this area of the country into Tornado Alley, it's met up with warm, moist air that's coming up south from the Gulf of Mexico. And when those two things collide, the cool, dry air tends to go under the warm, moist air. And when you start pushing the warm, moist air up, it begins going up into the air, going up into the atmosphere, and it cools down, and all that moisture begins to condense and turns into rainstorms. Now, that's just a normal rainstorm going on. Here in Texas, though, in Tornado Alley, some of them can go very, very high up into the atmosphere and create something called a supercell, where basically the moisture just goes up in a column, and it gets up to the point where it gets so high up in the sky that the atmosphere is so thin that the column just kind of breaks out apart and goes as high as it can go, because there's just not enough wind to pull it up any higher, and it forms out and flattens out and creates something called an Anvil Cloud. And that's generally the definition of one of the very most powerful storms, like I said, called a supercell, where the moisture gets up as high as 50,000 feet in the air. That's 10 miles or about 16 kilometers up. That's a lot higher than most storms go. And when that happens, that's indication that there's an enormous amount of moisture being pulled in. And as that moisture begins rising up, it begins to spin. And it spins as it goes up. And that spinning makes the whole cloud rotate. And kind of at the bottom of the cloud, you'll end up with something they call a wall cloud. And when that's very, very close to the ground, maybe a mile or so up, sometimes even less, that begins to spin. And when that begins to spin, sometimes something called a funnel cloud comes out of that. And when the funnel cloud goes down and hits the ground, it becomes a tornado. And depending on how fast it's going and how wide it is, it can be anything from a weak tornado that lasts a couple minutes to one of the largest, which is called an EF3, that can go for an hour, and it can be a mile or a mile and a half in diameter, and have pack winds going up to 300 miles an hour. Now, like I said, the storm that came through last night spawned a tornado in northern Dallas that was on the ground for about 35 minutes and got up to an EF3 level, which is kind of a medium level tornado. They were saying it got winds up to about 160 miles an hour. Definitely leveled a bunch of houses, pulled the roofs off houses. I read a report that a local Home Depot in the area basically got its roof ripped off because of that. But so far, knock on wood here, nobody has died. And that's really good news. But, I'm going to show you some pictures of some of the damage that happened. We'll put that in over the top of this. And then I'm going to show you some of the footage I got from the storm last night. So let's go take a look at all that. So it's about 2:30 in the morning on Monday morning, and we got a pretty nasty electrical storm coming through here. Apparently it's already spawned some tornadoes in the Dallas area. So yeah, I've decided I'm going to just kind of stay up and ride through this thing. Actually, I kind of hear the rain outside right now. It sounds like we're getting the first bands of it. Haven't been able to get a whole lot of sleep anyway because the NOAA radio has been going off kind of non-stop for the last few hours. Just warning of severe thunderstorms and all that happening all around the area. And you can see it's a pretty nasty one. And it's strengthening as it comes in, so... And just like that, the skies have opened up and it is pouring right now. This all just started in the last minute or two. I guess this is sort of the reason I moved to Texas, though, is to get rain like this. It never rains like this in California, I'll tell you that. And the external temperature has dropped 10 degrees in like the last 5 minutes. It's pretty amazing. It was 80 degrees just like 10 minutes ago. It was insane. Well, I hope that was actually kind of exciting. It was definitely exciting to be here, and it's interesting to kind of see how nature does its thing. And I hope you found that a little bit informative, maybe a little bit scary. But I think that is all that I have for today. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.